Our main speaker today is in many ways a model Williams graduate, having used his natural talent and Williams education to do three things: excel in his field, help others, and give back to his alma mater. In leading several major companies, he built a reputation as one of the nation's most distinguished and respected business leaders. He's helped broaden and deepen the nation's experience of the arts, particularly through his involvement, including as board member, with Carnegie Hall and the New York City Ballet. His alma mater he has worked for devotedly and in countless ways, large and small, visible and behind the scenes, especially in 9 years as a member of the Board of Trustees, including 6 as chairman of its executive committee. We have much to learn from this year's baccalaureate speaker, Bob Lipp, class of '60. Please welcome him.
I can't start this speech without just saying how touching and how beautiful that composition was. It was just magnificent. I think it's the next stop is Carnegie Hall for. Okay, well, when Morty called me a few weeks ago and asked me to replace the baccalaureate speaker, I was, of course, flattered and immediately accepted. Then I realized that I actually had to say something to you all. That gave me, I recognized that's not going to be an easy task. So I spoke to Chaplain Rick, some faculty members, read some recent baccalaureate speeches, all full of wise and profound advice, and that's not exactly my strong point, as my wife and kids will attest to. And then met with 6 or 7 of your fellow students over lunch in Williamstown a couple of weeks ago. And clearly the best advice that I got was from your fellow students. They told me to put myself back in the place where you are today and give you some personal thoughts about what you face given my experience in life after Williams. So that's what I'm going to do. Yes, I was in your seat about 50 years ago and have, by the way, absolutely no recollection of our baccalaureate speaker. I'm not even sure I was here, to tell you the truth. Today I will try to give you some of my personal thoughts and more accurately my biases on what's in store for you. So in the next few minutes I'll first give you my impressions of what the difference is between the Williams experience that you've gone through and then life after Williams. Secondly, I'll give you some tips on how to be successful in whatever career you choose. And by the way, don't worry about it. It's a lot easier than what you've been doing here. And then finally and lastly and most importantly, how to be successful in having a balanced and fulfilling life. Hence the title of this speech, Don't Make a Living, Make a Life. And I can already see the frowns on many parents' faces about the don't make a living part, having spent their life savings getting you to this point, and of course the alumni development people at Williams who are already looking for your contributions. And I apologize to both groups in advance. Okay, let's start with what differences I see between your class and my class 50 years ago. Good starting point. You are all very special, and I'm not kidding about that. I really think you are. You're smarter, you're more mature, and have had a much more diverse and enriching experience at Williams than we did. When I was here, it was all male. Fraternities were basically compulsory in terms of the living. And to a Jewish kid like myself from a public high school in Indiana, it was like landing on a very preppy Mars. I can only remember 2 African Americans in the school at that time, and they were both in my fraternity, which was one of the 2 houses here that took minorities and Jewish students voluntarily. It was pretty rough stuff. The one given that is the same, and I believe the distinguishing characteristic of Williams, is the superb and dedicated teaching faculty. I still get goosebumps when I think of Fred Schumann in a big lecture hall quoting from Alice in Wonderland, and Bob Gaudino's just piercing eyes, two memorable political science teachers that I will never forget. Also, no question in my mind, your spending the last 4 years getting a liberal arts education has been the best possible use of your time to prepare for the rest of your life. You really made the right choice. After Williams, I went to Harvard for my MBA and later received a law degree at NYU that at that time had a night school, so I did it when I was working. There is no comparison between the education that I received at Williams and the training that I got at those other schools. Now, what about the cold, cruel world that you're about to enter from the warm bosom of Williams? Don't look at this time as a beginning or end of some phase of your life, as most graduation speakers, I might say, advise, but rather as a continuation. The real lesson, and I really mean this, is that the things that make you happy at Williams are exactly the same things that you should continue for the rest of your life. I know it's hard to believe, but life really can be a continuation of what you've been doing at Williams. Let me give you some examples. First, learning. If you enjoyed the learning experience and the relationship with your faculty, why not just see your future as a continuation of this learning process? When I think again about my own experience, the best experiences were when I was thrown into a new situation, a different company, different people, new challenges. Right now at age 70, I'm actually involved and learning probably at a higher level than I ever have in my life because I'm involved for the first time in the emerging markets. I've spent a lot of time. I've been to China 16 times in the past 2 years doing deals over there, basically, trying to create something. It's a great learning experience for me and just as exciting as it is for all of you in the kind of situation you've been in here. It's a new culture, a country that it's a totally new stage of development than what we're used to in the developed world. And it's been a stretch for me and a great learning experience also for me. It's just great fun to keep learning. Probably much like when you took a risk here at Williams, signed up for a class way out of your comfort zone and ended up loving it. Just continue and remember that field. Just keep doing that. Secondly, people and relationships. I know you have made great relationships at Williams. Continue those and continue to discover what's interesting in other people for the rest of your life. For example, over the years, and this is just maybe something you'll think of if you're ever in my situation, at business dinners, I try to change the conversation at some point by asking people about their interest or passions in life outside of business. You'd be amazed at the different interests people have, whether it's cooking, climbing mountains, collecting Chinese pottery, writing poetry, the kind of conversation that opens the door to relate and to learn from the experiences of others. Next, what in the world is the big rush about embarking on your lifetime career right out of college? And again, I apologize to the parents here. Why not do something at this stage of your life, certainly, matter of fact, at all stages of your life, that you would love instead of doing something expected and traditional? I promise it will not hurt your career and may lead you in a totally new direction. Think about a gap period, a year, two or three. Can you work for an NGO in some part of the world? Some of you are going to teach. How about being an assistant coach or a ski instructor for a couple of years? What has been really interesting for you? Think about your own experience at Williams. Has it been, what's really turned you on? Is it art history? Is it women's studies? Is it environmental studies? Is there a way that you can continue to pursue these in some way and still support yourself? I assure you, and I have recruited here over the years, these experiences, if you do this, will be seen as a positive. Think also about opportunities beyond the corporate business world before you make a choice. I taught a winter studies course here for 3 years on nonprofit management. We got to see the management of 8 or 9 nonprofits up close and personal through site visits and extensive dialogues with each of them. I think many of us in the class going into it, including myself, went into this exercise with the feeling that people that choose a career in nonprofit organizations might be doing that because they couldn't make it in the for-profit world. We couldn't have been more wrong. The conclusion of all three Winter Studies programs, all of us together, was exactly the same, that the people that had chosen an alternative career to business, which ranged, I might add, from small nonprofit in North Adams who were helping people in the healthcare area to working for fine arts institutions such as the Norman Rockwell Museum in the Berkshires or Carnegie Hall in New York, was that the people running these organizations were extremely bright and motivated. Secondly, I would say clearly happier and more satisfied and fulfilled with their job choice than those on average in the business world. And money was not what it was about. In summary, continue what made you happy at Williams. Keep learning. Keep searching out interesting people. And keep a broad perspective on your career choices. If you can follow a passion, this is the time to go for it. Now it's time for I'll give you some tips. This is the practical part. I'll give you some tips on how to be successful once you make your first and usually, by the way, not final career choice. I will be referring to the business world because that's sort of the world that I'm most familiar with, but I think these suggestions will work in any career you choose. First, remember that you have already accomplished probably the most difficult thing that you will ever face in your life, and that's getting into Williams. It's also the most torturous thing that's probably you have to go through in your whole life. It starts, I guess, in pre-K or something like that. I wish Morty one of these days will figure out a better way to do this. It's just torture. And of course, the second and most exciting thing, and I know how busy and dedicated and essentially really busy you've been for the last 4 years. The second really that you've accomplished is completing Williams and sitting out there today, and I think that's fantastic. Business, by the way, much easier. I'm serious. You just don't have to work that hard. It's not that tough. Look, if I can make it, you sure as hell can make it. All right, some tips. I'll just give you a few quick tips that maybe you'll remember. First, the dreaded job interview. Just remember, you're probably brighter than the person interviewing you, especially if they work for the Human Resources Division. Be yourself. Don't try to be someone else, and I know that's exactly the opposite of probably what the OCC tells you. And, all those good-looking suits and stuff like that. If they don't like what they see, they've done you a favor. If you are hired and accept, you will never know what the company is really like. This is not a scientific process until you get there. And it probably doesn't make that much difference because you'll probably change jobs several times in your life anyway. So don't take it too seriously. If you do find yourself in a situation that you had hoped for, remember that the most important attributes for success, and these are not tough, in your career are common sense, which is a rare commodity in business, a sense of humor, you got to have it or you're dead, and doing a little more than expected. And I mean just a little more will distinguish you in most of the situations that I've seen. You don't have to kill yourself, I assure you. And another thing, which is never give up the willingness not to accept the conventional wisdoms in any company you join, because in most cases they're damaging. And I'll give you some examples. Every company adopts a certain culture or what I call conventional wisdom that is not written anywhere but is very strong. You'll see it clearly on your first day on the job, which, by the way, is probably the most important day. You see everything very clearly. 6 months or a year later, you're going to be damaged. You're going to start accepting whatever they're doing. Look for the companies that measure and reward real performance. Stay away from those companies who are imperial and bureaucratic. They're just torturous. I'll give you a personal example. Again, a couple that maybe will be helpful. I took Travelers Insurance public in 2002. Big, dumb, Hartford-based insurance company, that kind of stuff. In that process, we actually visited in order to sell the stock, we were selling $6 billion worth of stock, we visited 100 separate asset management companies, companies that manage money and buy stocks, obviously. The conventional wisdom would be that the most successful firms would have the most luxurious offices, they're very successful. In fact, the opposite was true. The more management worried about great furniture, the worse their performance. A case in point, Peter Lynch is his name, maybe you don't know, was running the Magellan Fund at Fidelity at that time. Magellan was the best performer of any mutual fund in the country for many years. We met his team in a small conference room, this is in Boston, linoleum on the floor, and he actually sat on the radiator cover because there were no more chairs, and he was just terrific. Look for that kind of stuff, not the fancy stuff. Another hint for success. It's amazing, as I say, how with a small amount of extra work and creativity, you can distinguish yourself in any organization. In general, the standard is really low. When I first joined Chemical Bank in the accounting division, I took some reports home and did a little work on a Saturday. Nobody asked me to do it. It wasn't required. I found out that we had several operations in the bank that were losing money and reported this to my boss, who was very pleased and pleased with my work. And of course, he immediately took all the credit for himself, which is normal, by the way, in business. Another tip, just do stuff. Ooh. This is a religious ceremony, I guess, isn't it? Did I say something wrong? Okay, another tip, just do stuff yourself. Forget about all these books about having to go through lines of management and everything else. When we purchased Travelers Insurance Company and I was put in as CEO, Chief Executive Officer, instead of meeting with other executives to try to improve productivity, if you go to the real people in a company, you find out what's going on. I went to the accounts payable department in the basement, I might add, and spent 4 hours with the people who were going through expense vouchers. Within the first 3 minutes, they told me everyone in the organization who was throwing away the shareholders' money. They just knew it all. All you had to do was just ask them, because they look at all these expense vouchers. I would have never discovered that on the executive floor. Today, I always try to get out on the street. By the way, one of my tips is nothing good ever happens in the main office. So the farther you can get from the main office, you'll find out what reality is. And so I spent a couple of hours walking up 3rd Avenue in New York City, visiting bank branches, and by the end of the hour or two that I did that, I ended up knowing more than most about the competition. I do the same thing in Beijing when I'm there. You stop, you get out, you walk up the street with a translator, I might add, and go into all the competing branches. People love to talk about, they love to talk about their banks, their companies, and everything. You can pick up real information. Okay, some other quick examples good examples of hands-on management and then hands-off management. Hank Paulson, when he was the CEO of Goldman Sachs, would take 5 3x5 index cards every day with some information about customers. And he would never finish the day without calling them. And he's downtime, and you got a cell phone, you're in a car, something like that. It had a huge impact on the Goldman Sachs business. It's just such common sense. Why wouldn't you get a call? You get a call from the CEO of a company, it makes you feel great. Citibank in the early 90s almost went broke on bad mortgages. Big surprise to senior management in the high-rise executive building. If they had spoken to anyone in the mortgage application department, which is at St. Louis at that time, they would have been informed of the bad mortgages that were being written on a daily basis. That's all you do. Everybody in the department knew about it. Unfortunately, these days, history has just sort of repeated itself. At Travelers, the stock had tanked again because of bad mortgages in the early 90s. Everyone was depressed. Management was still spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on employee surveys. I have no idea what they thought they were going to find out. You could see everybody was depressed anyway. I replaced it with my survey. I threw out all the employee surveys. The walking around survey. And we had 2 buildings that connected. It was like a big airline terminal and a long hall between the 2 that connected. And I would go purposely. I'd be back and forth in that hall, back and forth several times a day, and I basically would almost run into you if you were coming in my way, and I would say hello. And I would see whether anybody would either respond with a hello, or they would be looking at their shoelaces, or they would be saying something. And over time, that turned out to be a very accurate indicator of how people felt about it. The other thing is always listen to people in elevators. Which reminds me, don't talk in elevators because it gets you in a lot of trouble. What are they talking about? That'll tell you probably more about the company you're joining than any of these interviews, I can tell you that. Are they talking about business? Are they talking about clients? Are they talking about service? Are they talking about new products? Or alternatively, are they talking about how soon I can get out of here today? That'll tell you a lot. Next, once you have any administrative responsibility, and I'll make this quickly, you have an immense power to do good. Take advantage of it. People working for you, if you ever get to that position, it's just amazing. I got that in my late 20s at Chemical Bank, and it was just great fun to know the employees, and I was running check processing at the time. Do you know what it means to be a person working in the night shift in check processing to see the manager there all the time? Do you know what it means to somebody who knows their unit is being measured on the numbers that they're controllable by them and not some highly complex allocation system that nobody could understand? Do you know how it feels to get a phone call which immediately recognizes excellent performance on your part? And seriously, those are the kind of things that make a huge difference. It just makes a huge difference. Okay, other quick tips for success. As I said, nothing good ever happens in the main office, so get out in the field. And finally, and this is very important, I think, in this day and age, finally, don't accept going along with the crowd. If the rationalization is that everyone does it this way, either in your company or in your industry, when you hear this, do a gut check, because this is a warning. The firm may be doing something wrong or unethical if the justification is everybody does it this way. It's better to think about doing something that no one does if it's right for the customer. Okay, also, by the way, and this is a low point in my career, these are personal experiences, if you ever are sitting in a meeting anywhere and you find yourself hoping one of your colleagues will mess up so you look better, maybe this happens in class too, I'm not sure, then you need a change, either in the company or yourself. This actually happened to me, and as I look back to it, and I remember the guy actually that I was thinking about, we're friends now, but as I reflect back on it, it was a low point in my career. I got lucky. I got fired from that job later, and it was a blessing. It's okay. By the way, you will fail along the way. It's okay. These things actually happen, and sometimes they turn out very positively. Okay, last section of the speech is really, of this speech, which is the part about don't make a living, make a life. Obviously, all of us have to make a living. We need money to support ourselves and our families. And hopefully, if we, as discussed, you can find things to generate income that'll be exciting, creative, continuous learning experiences, and that you will feel great about the environment that you have created for people who work with you or for you. Some of the least happy people I know are workaholics who do nothing but business. It's not good. That's why I think balance is the important thing. Always think about balance in life. When I think about some of the happiest and most fulfilled people I know, let me give you, they're all pursuing their passions in life. And fortunately, these coincide with the careers they have chosen. Just a great combination. Let me give you some examples. Clive Gillinson, who runs Carnegie Hall now. He's running probably the best music venue in the world and able to realize his most creative ideas. He's just full of creative ideas. It's just so terrific, and he is in a position to realize them. Bob Robinson, by the way, Addie Robinson, his daughter graduated from Williams, is a great ski instructor and master plumber in Vail for the last 30 years, who has made a life for himself and his family doing the things he loves in the Colorado outdoors. Sandra Burton here, who's, I think, is the best, an educator and supporter of young people at Williams in her area of dance. In addition, the other parts of my life, besides work and so forth, really make a difference, and balance, as I say, in life is really important. For me, it's family and friends, classical ballet and music, gardening, and most recently getting involved in a primary school in Yongfeng, China, which is out in the agricultural areas. We convinced the local provincial, a few of us convinced the local provincial educational authorities to make this village school for 94 children. It's a primary school, and these are children of farmers, into a demonstration school which will emphasize Chinese culture, English, and computers. It's going to be a great and exciting project for our whole family for many years to come. That's the kind of richness that you have in life. And you know, these are just examples. You can think of the kind of things that will work for you. And finally, as Morty says, and it's just been great to be associated with him, Williams College. What a treat to be involved with all of you. An immensely dedicated teaching faculty, administration, and staff, and extraordinary students. It's been the best for me. Last word, forget all the cliches about this beginning being the beginning or end of something. Make this a continuation of all the things you loved at Williams. The learning, the friends, the passions. Just keep it going. Thanks a lot.